Hello, hello, everyone. Jamie Trull here. We are currently live. It's been a hot minute since I've been live. So I wanted to say, hey. So wherever you're watching me from, if you're watching this currently, or if you're watching this on replay, definitely give us a hey down below in the comments. Let us know you're here. This is live currently in my Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners Facebook group. If you are not a member, you need to come on over. This is live on my Facebook page, and this is live also on YouTube. So wherever you are watching me from, say hi. And I'm excited today because this is the time where we are walking towards the end of the year. We're in November, y'all. We're in November 8th. Like, that is blowing my mind right now that we are in November. But it's the time of year. This is our busiest time of year because this is when everyone is getting really refocused back on the financial side of the house, right? So I teach finances. So it tends to be that around this time of year, people start realizing, okay, I need to close out the year. What do I need to do? I need to get things in order for taxes, right? I want to start the year fresh and really start planning for next year. So this is our busiest time of year. So one of the things that one of my preferred vendors, so for those who have not, seen my preferred vendors list, definitely go check it out. My content manager, Crystal, is here, and she will put the link to our preferred vendors list in the chat right now. I'm going to be bringing up one of my preferred vendors, Christina Springstead. She is fabulous. Many people have worked with her from the group and from our audience. So we've only gotten great things to hear from her. And she came to me and said, we've had some things happen and had some conversations with some of our new clients. And I think it's really important that we're talking about vetting your financial professionals and how to do that in the best way possible. So I'm going to bring Christina on because I thought that was a great idea. A lot of people are looking to hire maybe a new bookkeeper to help you get sorted for 2023, or maybe to start in 2024 and start fresh with a new system. So we're going to talk about all of that and how to make sure you hire the best person, right? What do you look for? What questions do you ask? So let's bring up Christina without further ado. Hey, Christina.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be here. You're right. You have not been live in a minute, and I'm excited to be
It's
one
it's
who's
been
bringing
a
it
hot
back with
minute,
you.
and I miss the
Yeah.
lives because I just like the interaction. It just feels more real than like I do a lot of my content now on YouTube, which is great, and it lives there a little bit longer. But I really love doing the lives where we get to interact a little bit better. So, Christina, intro to the group if they don't know who you are. Tell them a little
Yes.
bit about you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Christina Springstead. I am owner and founder, CEO. I'm putting on my CEO hat. Jamie, you're proud of me. Of
Woohoo!
Springstead Solutions. Yes. This is my passion business that I've built after doing it for a side gig for over a decade, probably longer than that, based in California. And I just have a heart for numbers and doing kind of the back end side of all the books throughout the entire year. And to help people. I'm financial fitness formula certified. I'm profit first certified. I love helping people with cash flow because my biggest thing is I don't want all of our people with entrepreneurial dreams to be that 5-year statistic that they don't make it.
Yeah.
And so that is my passion project.
And I love that you have like the chops to back it up, right? Like you are getting the certifications, Profit First certification, which is amazing. So many people use the Profit First
Mhm.
methodology. We also have our financial fitness formula, which is the course where I teach people to be their own CFO, which Christina has been through that and gotten certified in
Yes.
that too. So I love that she's just like, I want to learn all the different things and I want to help people to be able to implement, because that's what a lot of it is, right? We can learn the things, but it's the implementation oftentimes that we need a little bit of that additional like one-on-one help with, right?
And yeah, and the other thing I like to share with people is I think where I'm a little bit different from other people in my business is I ran businesses for a long time before I became in, right? So I went straight out of high school into accounting, thought it was, I didn't want to sit behind a desk and crunch numbers forever, right? And then went off and did other stuff, ran small businesses, ran into cash flow problems. How are we going to pay bills? Like I was running other companies. How are we going to make payroll? And now I'm in this. So I'm not just someone who my whole career I've just thrown numbers and done all that, but I've
Mm-hmm.
lived the challenges that a lot of entrepreneurs have. And now I'm on the other end saying, how can I help people not go through that? So
Yeah, and I think it's the difference between like the theoretical and the
yes,
reality of the situation, right? And that
yes,
allows you to have more insights into how it really feels, it's not we're not talking about, "Oh man, I wish my EBITDA was better." It's like, "Hey, I need to make payroll," right? Like you understand
yeah.
the actual challenges that business owners have,
Yeah.
and
And with
accountants, I
that
think
comes some
yeah,
with that comes some compassion, right? You get some, providers, and if they're just throwing numbers at you, you're kind of lost and don't know what to do. And with that
yeah.
is like, I've lived this. Let's walk through it together. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. All right, so let's talk about again, today is about the importance of vetting your financial team. So when we're talking about financial team, who are we talking about here? We're talking about bookkeepers, also CPAs, all those people, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I like to say we're talking about bookkeepers, accountants, and CPAs, right? Because I even on this journey had to learn there are bookkeeping tasks and then there are accounting, which doesn't mean CPA, not public accountants, right? But
Mhm.
accounting and understanding the difference. So when you're vetting, you understand what you're asking of the provider and you're understanding in your questions what they can truly provide to you.
And I think to underscore this, the thing that I always say too, and I'm imagining you would agree, is don't feel like you should know, like when you go to talk to somebody and to engage with them. I think there is a fear of asking questions about, like, well, what are you going
Yes.
to do? And what services are you going to provide? And all of those things, because we feel like we should know, like, what a bookkeeper does. But let me tell you, they're all different. Right? Like it's not like
Yes.
there's probably like a standard certain amount of things, but
Mhm.
I think it's totally fine to clarify not even fine, but very much very important to clarify like
Mhm.
what are you paying that person to do? Because I see a lot of posts in our Facebook group that come through that are usually posts that are like, my CPA or my bookkeeper did this and this, but isn't doing this and this. Should they be doing this and this? And
Yep.
you get people chiming in saying, yeah, mine does that or mine doesn't or whatever. And I'm like, well, what did you contract with them to do? Right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and if I can add what I've really seen, because it's the time of year, you're right, we're busy. I'm meeting a lot of people because they're searching for their team or
Mhm.
help in cleanup. And the thing is, if you're not asking those questions, right, that you and I were just talking about this, is bookkeeping, sadly and gladly, is really unregulated. So anybody can get into it, right? So you've got someone calls themselves a bookkeeper and they're at that, they could be beginning and they're just starting, and they could be in it for decades and they know a lot of stuff. And bookkeeping is looked at as very simple. They're just putting my transactions and reconciling, but that is not the end of the story. There is so much more to the bookkeeping world that people don't understand. And so if you're not asking those questions, it's not going to help you figure it out, right? So you want to ask questions. And if your bookkeeper is really educated in accounting fundamentals, which is important, they're not going to be stumbling over the answer to give you right answers to your questions. So find all the questions. And you want to know that if you come with a question, you can ask them. And there really is no dumb question, because me as a provider, I want to know, how much do you know? Because I don't want to just throw stuff at you and assume you know because you asked me nothing, and then you're at home by yourself going, I don't understand what any of this means. Obviously, Christina's not the right person for me. No,
Mhm.
because we didn't communicate. So yes, ask all of the questions.
And if you're uncomfortable asking the questions, sometimes that can maybe be because it might not be the right service provider, right? Like if you
Yes.
feel like you can't really ask or you're going to be judged for asking, then that may not be the best fit for you. And that's something I think that's really important to say. Like if you feel that way, right? I think there's an industry. I won't, not that I'm going to dog on an industry, but I'm going to dog on an industry for a minute. I think there's an industry, I think a lot of women specifically have had the experience of being like talked down to, or, things like that when they're talking to these service providers, be it financial service providers, lawyers, whatever, right? Professionals where accountants love to be the keepers of the information. We love to use big words, right? We love to
Yeah.
impress you with all of our knowledge about something. And I think that need can sometimes make people feel uncomfortable to be like, okay, I'm just going to smile and nod,
Mhm.
right? We've all done the smile and nod, like, okay, I have no idea what you're talking about, but okay. And if you feel like you need to do that with somebody, it's probably not the best fit for you, right? It's
Mhm.
not you. It's just not the right person for you. And so maybe
Right.
shopping around a little bit to somebody you feel a little bit more comfortable, because it is so vulnerable. I've had people tell me like, the reason they avoid getting a bookkeeper is they're like, I feel like it's like opening, like I feel like it's just me basically getting naked in front of the world, right? Is like what it
Yep.
feels like to hire somebody and let them in on whatever the financial
Mhm.
situation you have looks like. And I think that's one of the things that stops people from doing it. So what would you say to that, I guess? If people have, it
Yeah.
is a little bit of a diversion, but if people have that concern, like, oh my God, this is really vulnerable, what would you
No,
say to
and
them?
but it is. And
Mhm.
even on our end, right, is like I think bookkeeping, your financial team is the most intimate business relationship you can be in. And you're
Yeah.
right. It is like standing there vulnerable, naked to the world, saying, I don't know. You can see everything. Like we can see everything, right? And the
Mhm.
thing is, just because we can see everything doesn't mean we're judging. And if you do get that sense, it's not the right fit, and that's okay.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of us out there, right? Like, and to say that everybody's for everyone, that's not true.
No.
Find the person that you enjoy talking to, that you're very comfortable to come and ask the questions for, because that it's just extremely important. You want to feel comfortable. If you don't have a good financial support, right? The financial foundation is what's going to keep your business going for years. Well, that team needs to be able to hold that foundation up. And if you don't trust that team, you don't have a foundation you can trust. So it's
Yeah.
extremely important.
And I think also the comfort in knowing like they've seen it all, right? Like
Yeah,
don't feel like you're going to be the everybody thinks like, "Oh my god, it's terrible."
mhm,
Everybody says that. And I'm going to tell you they've almost definitely seen worse before, right?
absolutely.
And nobody's going to their friends like, "Oh my god, can you believe these people?" Right? Like that's not the
No.
conversations that are happening that we fear are happening. It's normal, right? You're normal,
Mhm.
whatever situation your books are in, or even if you don't have them, right? Like it is normal, and it is. I can't tell you. I mean, I have a job because it's normal, right? I'm not a bookkeeper, but I teach finances. Christina has a job because it's normal, right? Like it's
Mhm.
normal that this is difficult and that it is something that, we're not all meant to be doing our own books. Right? If you hate it or if you
Yes.
don't do it, it's probably time to, go find a professional to help you out, and don't use the like, oh my god, and don't. And I know this is one thing, right? Like before you're going to go vet professionals, don't try to clean it up yourself. Right, Christina?
Yes. Or I'm just gonna share a quick story. I have a client and she's approved me to share the story. But she wanted to work with me and I adore her, wanted to work with her. And she didn't have her stuff cleaned up. And she's like, I'm gonna get my 2022 cleaned up. And she hired someone else to clean up her 2022, recommended by her CPA. And so they cleaned it all up. I came in fresh for January. It's great. As I'm going through her stuff, I realized all of her income was booked to an owner's draw. And she had her tax return filed in that capacity. And
Uh,
so as I recognized it, I said, "Oh, all of your income is sitting in here." And she didn't understand what that meant. And I said, "That means your tax return is completely wrong. Like it's showing you pulled a bunch of money out of the business, one that you never even had. You didn't even have that money, but it was your true income."
yeah.
She had to have her finances like we had to redo the books. The CPA had to go in and readjust everything. And then she had paid to have that done and it was wrong, and then had to pay to have it corrected. So it's
Mhm.
really important when you're going to the person, like one, I enjoy cleanup. I never thought I would. But we actually enjoy it. We want to help you, right? If you're with the right service provider, let us help you through the process. Let us help you get it right. And there's really rewarding in that. And then, yeah, you cleaning it up yourself, that's great. But I can promise you there's tons of CPAs that look at what you cleaned up and they're on the back end cleaning it up through journal entries, right? It's
Mhm.
because it wasn't right. So let's just get it done correctly out the gate.
I love that, and you're so right, like, we love this stuff. Like, a good
Yes.
cleanup, and I don't do bookkeeping, but I love the feeling you get at the end of, like, "Okay, there's a problem, I need to find it, right? And I need to solve it, and then now I'm gonna do my reconciliation, and oh my lord, like, it's all working and everything's tying out." Like,
Yes.
there is no better feeling to somebody like Christina or I than that.
Mm-mm.
Like,
Yes.
I want to bottle that feeling, and you're probably like, "Dear God, that does not sound like something that I want to do." And we're like, "Ooh, give it to us. Like, let's figure this
Yeah.
out." So if you're feeling like embarrassed, just remember it's a gift, right? Like give us the gift of like, us numbers people just want to get in there. We want to get our hands dirty. We want to find the issue and we want to solve it. And then that's like the biggest feeling of satisfaction for us to be
Yeah.
able to help you, right? So I think that's one way to think about it. I think will hopefully
Mhm.
help. And yeah, don't try to clean it up yourself because it usually makes it harder, right? And then we got to go back and like unwind and figure out like what happened. And I've had to do this even in my own books where I do myself a disservice sometimes. I know enough to be
Don't
dangerous,
we?
not a bookkeeper. So
Yeah.
Christina, don't ever look at my journal entries in my books.
I love that you say that, Jamie, because we talked about that a minute ago. And there's an assumption I think that's out there. And another passion project I have is understanding the levels. You have this in one of your courses, is what is a bookkeeper's function? What is an accounting's function? And what is a CPA function?
Yes.
And even in bankers, right? And there's this assumption that a banker and a CPA knows everything about bookkeeping.
Yep.
Bookkeeping is complex. Like there's
Yep.
a reason we're all separate, and bookkeeping is taking care of all your day-to-day stuff. That's really where you start and enter. And it's what we call a lot of this, right? And accounting is like, hey, I'm going to take all your day-to-day stuff. And then we're going to do analysis and we're going to do forecasting, but like we're going to do more creative stuff. And then you get your CPAs who are going to take all that information, file your tax return and help you with tax strategy. But there's this misnomer that CPAs know all of that stuff and can do all of it, right? And it's not. And not even bankers, right? Like people assume bankers are looking at my financials, they understand all of it. Foreign concepts. And there's definitely different buckets of professionals, which is why it's so important to understand what you need. So when you're talking to someone, you can make sure they have those capabilities.
Absolutely. And I think that is definitely, I mean, I'm technically a CPA. I don't file taxes even, right? You don't want me bookkeeping and you probably don't want me filing your taxes. I can teach you about taxes, but you probably don't want me doing that back end work for you. I love the strategic side of business. So I can read a P&L like nobody's business, right? Like I can analyze, read a P&L, do all the things, but QuickBooks is like, sometimes I'm just like, oh man, somebody asks me, like people will ask me all the time, like, how do I do this in QuickBooks? And I'm like, talk to Christina.
Yeah. Well, and good luck knowing, because they're constantly changing it, right? I mean, I guess thank you for job security, but it's always changing. So
yeah, exactly. It's not my forte. But I love the outputs from it, right? I love what you can get from doing it, but I don't love the actual act of bookkeeping.
Yes.
So I love that. So yeah, I know, right? So tell me more about like what, if people are trying to vet a financial team member, what else should they make sure that they're asking? And I know you have a checklist too that we'll go ahead and share here, that they can download for free, that goes into more about kind of vetting a bookkeeper specifically. But let's talk about that a little bit, Christina, a little bit more.
Yeah. So the most important things to ask is, one, asking the questions that lets you understand their full capabilities, right? A lot of people go in and the credential that they're putting out there is, I'm QuickBooks, Pro certified. And that's fantastic. That means squat saying that you understand accounting fundamentals. And I hate to say it, but we need more than that, right? So if your question is, what are your certifications? And I'm QuickBooks Pro certified, the question should not stop there. That does not mean you understand how to use the software.
Yeah.
There should be questions of, do they understand, how far do they reconcile, right? A lot of people reconcile the bank and credit card. What about all the rest of the balance sheet accounts, right? There's other balance sheet accounts typically that need to be taken care of. Do they understand true accounting fundamentals? How do they work with you, right? Is it email only? And are you okay with that? Is there, digital chat function available? Like, how will they communicate with you? And does that set well with you? Because if it doesn't, you're not going to be happy. It's, what is their background? How long have they been doing this? How many clients do they have? Can they share a referral with you? Because there's, this is one of those industries that a lot of people came into, especially during COVID, and a lot of people are doing it as a side gig. And I think that's fantastic, but that can be dangerous at the same time, right? And so there's that thing, is you need to understand, do they really understand assets, liabilities, and equity, right? Do they understand what that means? How do they handle getting the information, right? Are they just taking the bank feed and throwing it in there and asking you no questions? Like, do they understand how to figure this information out? Are they good with technology, right? Like, what is it, just only QuickBooks? Like there's just a ton of questions to ask in their qualifications here. The biggest one is how do you get to the end of, do they understand true accounting principles, right? And from that comes, how many clients do you have? How many have you worked with? Can you get a referral? Well, is there someone that they can talk to? And you could ask them, if you had some good troubleshooting questions, God bless ChatGPT, you could go in and be like, just type in a couple of questions that you might have, like, what would I ask to vet a bookkeeper? And my checklist has a ton of stuff. It not just as questions, but things for you to stop and think about when you're talking to that provider. But the biggest thing is, what all do you reconcile, right? And then if you see issues with the reconciliation, right? Because other people are reconciling, they just do it. But what about if there's transactions left? Do they do something with that, right? So what are the most common things that they see, and see if they can tell you the common errors. Because if they don't have a list, they probably haven't been doing it so long. So those are really the big ones. And you can probably more eloquently put to that, but it's education, experience, and how well do they understand not just bookkeeping, not just QuickBooks or
Yeah.
Wave or Zero or whatever you're using.
And I love the point about like asking what are the common errors you see, because that's going to give
Hmm.
you some insight into how they understand accounting, right? Because that's hard to ferret.
Hmm.
If you're not an accounting person, right? You're like, how do I determine if they understand accounting? I don't know.
Right.
But I think there's a way that they will talk about like an understanding, okay, if there are issues in bookkeeping, how does that then affect the overall accounting, right? Whether that's your financial statements and the decisions you're going to make with them, whether that's how your tax return is going to be filled out, right? Like they have to at least understand. They may not be know all the tax, code and all the credits and all the things, but they don't need to. But what they should understand is how what they're doing fits into what's going to happen for taxes, and
Hmm.
how issues with bookkeeping can cause issues with taxes, with strategic decision making, right? Like they have to be able to get out of the weeds enough to understand where they fit in it. And I
Exactly.
think that is something that you kind of have to ferret out and see, like, okay, what are some of the questions that we can ask here? What are the common mistakes you see, right? And what does
Hmm.
that then cause? Um, because I completely agree, Christina. I think that is absolutely critical. And a lot of people just doing bookkeeping may not have that background in understanding, right, the debits and credits behind it. And that's
Hmm.
really necessary too, especially if they're going to be going in and making any kind of like manual journal entries. You have got to understand the implications of what you're doing on the books. And that's why it's never a great idea for anybody who does it, who's not an accountant, to go in and try to like make your own journal entries, because it's don't do what I do.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing too is, is a common is how often are you using journal entries? Because in true bookkeeping, it shouldn't have to be that often. There are definitely times that it's warranted depending on, how you bring your income in and,
Yeah,
does your income flow from other platforms
right.
warranted? But if journal entries is your main source of bookkeeping transactions, that's also that's a cautionary flag to me, is because it should all be feeding through, and they
Mhm.
should be understanding how QuickBooks works. And then when your balance sheet makes no sense, and what reports do they send you? Do they only send you a P&L? That's a little bit of a red flag for me too, because you should be getting the big three, I call it. You should be getting the P&L, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows. If
Mhm.
you're not getting all three of those to paint your full picture, right? Doesn't mean you understand them, but you should be getting them. The bookkeeper probably doesn't understand the importance of all of them either.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things to discuss and to chat with whoever you're vetting about this too is, do they provide any insights? Right now, it may be an additional cost for depending on what kind of insights, but I do think that a lot of bookkeepers are not in a place where they're historians, right? So are you
Mhm.
fully just a historian? I'm going to give you it, but I'm not going to give you any thoughts or anything else. Or are they going to kind of proactively see things and say, oh, hey, let me flag this up to you, right? Is that something that you're looking for? And I think that's something to ask if you are, and make sure
Mhm.
that's included. And again, that might be an upcharge for that future. There's a lot of value that comes with that. So oftentimes, you get what you pay for, right?
Yep. Mhm.
Like you said, Christina, you definitely can get what you pay for.
Yeah.
Um, so if you want that, that's something to find somebody who's comfortable doing that, who again has to understand accounting, has to have some level of like strategic understanding, so they can give you that, because that's not
Mhm.
going to be everybody.
No, and that I love that you said that, because when we're talking bookkeepers versus accountants, and again, not CPAs, right? But accounting
Yeah.
functions. It is history versus, managerial, right? Like financial accounting, which is all historical, versus managerial and strategy and looking forward. And so it is important to ask for those things, because what I found is that there's a lot of assumptions around what you think they should do. And on the same end, there's a lot of assumptions around, well, this is what I do. And you want to make sure those come together and match. And if you're looking for their strategy, maybe it's, hey, I'm going to come on board. I'm just getting started, right? People who just need, like, I need a bookkeeper and it's all historical for right now until I have a little bit more. And then I'm going to ask for the accounting function. Have those questions and make sure that person is can move into that realm, right?
Mhm.
Because some bookkeepers are strictly bookkeepers and they're not ever going to go above. So if that's something you want down the future, have that conversation now too. Because changing your financial team, like when it's necessary, great. But it's like changing an insurance provider. It's a lot of work.
That, well, yeah,
And you want to get the
re-educating.
relationship that's, Yeah, that and
Mhm.
getting to know and how do you work, and every bookkeeper works differently. Jamie, if you talk to 100 bookkeepers, there's at least going to be 80 different ways that people are doing something, right?
Oh,
If
yeah.
not a full 100. And so understand what you're looking for in the future and then ask that person if they can grow with you, right? Like maybe
Mhm.
you're on the lower level of what their service is, but they can grow. If they can't grow ever past this,
Yeah.
then I encourage you to think about maybe keep looking.
And if something feels off, if you have a current provider and something just feels off where it's like, you are like, I'll worry about it later, but like you're not getting the service that you really want or need, or you're pulling up your
Mhm.
P&L and you're like, this doesn't really make sense. Like, if it just seems like they don't really understand your business. Cause I think that's another thing is
Yes.
really talking to them about, okay, have you worked with this industry? Not that you have to have somebody that has worked in your specific industry, but they should at least have some type of like way to analogize, especially if you're in a more specialized industry, right? Pretty much anybody
Mhm.
can work with a service provider. That's the easiest, right? Product based, if you are product based, make sure to ask, have you worked with product based businesses before? Because that is a different animal, right? And people need to be aware of like all of that comes with that. And now we're talking sales taxes and various different things that you may need. So I think that kind of thing is really critical too, is to say like, hey, have what experience do you have in industries similar to this
Mhm.
that they can kind of pull from, right?
Yeah, I think that's hugely important. Like even nonprofits, that's a big thing, right? Is some new people will go. I was just meeting with one yesterday, and although I had not been in the industry that I was meeting with, I was able to speak the language because I knew enough about the industry. Hadn't done the books, but I'm educated enough to know. Those were great questions, and I could say, well, at the end of the year, you have to send these statements out and these statements, and I would need to know that. And they were able to say, oh, okay, she's educated enough to know. So if you do have a specialized thing and at the end of the year this is important or that, ask that question, see how they respond.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say in vetting your bookkeeper is it's very important to understand the methodology of pricing, right? I get a lot of questions is like, well, do you price by hour? And just give me a rate. That is, that's not possible. You need to go to be prepared that your bookkeeper or your potential provider is going to say, I need to see your books, which is a good thing because one, if you're searching for an hourly provider, that's not how most of us are rolling these days. And I would caution against that because hourly providers, it almost behooves them to take more time on your file, right? And so when you get a flat rate, I personally have a calculator. How much transactions you have going in, it's non-emotional. It just tells me what to charge you. That's what you get. And as I get better at my craft, it's not taking me as long, but that's good. And that's like any employee, right? You don't hire an employee and say, you got better at your job, we're going to lower your rate. And it shouldn't be
Mhm.
that way for service providers either. So definitely make sure when you're going in there that you're asking, how are they charging? And, you know, I'm a fan of flat rate these days. It encourages them to get better with your account, to do it more, and hourly. I don't know, Jamie, you've seen this. Sometimes bookkeepers like, well, life happened. I didn't get to it. So I'll pick up all the hours 2 months from now because I got
Mhm.
behind.
Yeah.
Flat rate
There's
people, you can't do that.
Yeah.
We got to get your stuff done every month. So,
Yep. Yep, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I think just in general, aligning on what you're paying and for what. I just think, again, like contractually, what's included, what's extra. I really think it's important. Not all bookkeepers have contracts, but I really think you should ask
mhm.
for one that clearly spells out like things like that so that you know. And when there's like a dispute or something and you think that they haven't done what they're supposed to, well, you can go back to the contract and say, hey, this was part of what I'm paying you for, right? And then also, like, okay, if I want them to, here's what's included. If there's other things, here's what I would be charged if I asked them to do those things, right? It's just aligning on all of that and asking all those questions. I feel like we always have to learn the hard way with any of this legal stuff. It's like, oh, I liked them. I trust them. I'm sure it'll be fine. And then like flash forward, we're like, why didn't I ask more questions? Why didn't I, like we just I do this all the time. I am like, oh, we vibe. Like I'm hiring you, and that's important. But
Yes.
also, let's get all the let's cross our T's and dot our I's, right? Like
hmm
let's make sure this is legit and we understand what the expectations are. And that's good for everybody, right? That avoids
Yeah.
like the conflict and the like friction that you will have in the future. So if you are not asking questions because you're conflict avoidant and you're like, I just don't want to cause an issue, well, it's going to cause more issues later when you don't,
Yes.
right? So it's best to just make sure you're aligned, make sure everybody understands, and like we're good to go from the get. Okay, Christina. So we're
Yeah.
running low on our time. So I want to make
Okay.
sure to, again, tell people to go check out your free downloads. So you have a couple of things. You've got your selecting the ideal bookkeeper in the digital
Hmm.
age, which I love. And then you've also got an end of year bookkeeping checklist, which I think is great too. So they can go ahead and download both of those. If you love checklists, you can also get mine. Mine's a little different, I think, than Christina's, because hers is going to
Hmm.
focus more on bookkeeping. Mine is kind of big picture tasks you want to do in your business before the end of the year and then after the end of the year. So you can also go to jamietrull.com/year end, I think. Crystal will put it in the chat, I'm sure. So we just released an updated year-end
Yeah.
checklist that came out yesterday. So you can also grab that too. So just go download all the things, go take a look through them. As we're coming into the end of the year, I think it's a really good idea just to make sure you have all your ducks in a row, right? Thanks, Crystal. This is why I love you. I was right. So go check out all of those. All the links should be in the comments as well to this video. If you're looking for something, reach out to Christina also if you're
Yeah.
looking for someone and you think she would be a good fit for you. Her information is all on our preferred vendor list. And we have also other preferred vendors too that do various different things. So you can go check out who we have for tax preparation and various different roles over there, depending on what you're looking for. So we have vetted professionals that we love that have been a part of this. Christina's been here since the beginning of
Yeah.
our preferred vendor program, and we just love y'all. We're so thankful for you guys, and yay, we're friends. We've got our balance and our friends. I love it. All right, Christina, thanks for coming. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
I just start thinking about your end of year right now, folks. I know it's going into the holidays, but download the checklist. They will be great to pair together. And Jamie's community is fantastic. Every one of the preferred vendors is amazing. And I'm just thrilled to be here and invite all your people to her page because there's so many resources. So invite everybody.
Come on in.
Yeah.
Everyone's welcome. All right,
Okay.
Christina, we'll talk soon. Thanks for joining
Okay.
us. Bye.